Hey, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome to it. Hump Day, middle of the week, downhill slide to Firearms Friday. And boy, I tell you what, we're going to need some Firearms Friday action just to kind of chill us out here for this week. It's been it's been an interesting time. Let's put it that way. An interesting time, and we are ready to go. We have got a full show today. We're going to be joined here in a moment by David Boyle, who is an education advocate and frequent guest on the program talking about educational issues. I'm going to ask David's forbearance here for a minute because I want to get into just a little bit of what the opening of the session looked like yesterday. And it's time, folks. It's coming. We're going to get into that in just a second. Hour 2 is going to be Zack Gottshall, who is the former vice chair of the Alaska Republican Party, and he is now running for the big seat. He's had enough. He's mad as hell. He's not going to take it anymore, yada, yada, yada. And he's ready to jump into that. We're going to talk with him about that in hour 2. Tomorrow on the program, full boat tomorrow, Senator Rob Miles will be with us in hour 1. And then Ben Carpenter will be with us in the full hour 2. And then on Friday, Dr. John Lott will be joining us for Firearms Friday. And then all the way to Monday, Josh Church, who is a lieutenant gubernatorial candidate on the ticket of David Bronson, is going to be joining us to talk about that campaign as well. So we've already got a bunch of stuff lined up here, but I got to tell you, I told Facebook last night that I was heated, and that's because I am, folks. I'm heated, but at the same time, I've been telling you this is coming. And it's I mean, I hate to say I told you so, but by God, I told you so. This is what's happening. And we're going to get educational issues with David Boyle here in just a minute, and more than what I initially anticipated. At first, I just wanted to talk to him about the new Alabama model of the Numeracy Act, which is the answer to the Alaska Reads Act. Now it's the math version of it. We're going to talk to him about that, but there's a bunch of stuff that came up on education too. But last night, or yesterday afternoon rather, there was a Senate presser, and that press conference basically was lining out everything that the Senate is focused on in the legislature. And this is going to take a minute. And again, I'm going to ask David's forbearance. He's hanging out in the green room right now. Just give me a thumbs up if you're okay, David. Let me know that you're good. We're going to get to the education component of it first, but this is so important, folks, because this is setting the tone for what is going to be happening in this legislative session. Okay? This is what's happening. They are now saying the quiet part out loud. And we're going to start here. I've only got these 2 sound bites, but it's going to take just a few minutes to kind of go over it real quick. The first one is from Lyman Hoffman. Who basically is saying in this presser yesterday that we can't even afford $1,000 PFD. We haven't figured out how to cut the budget. We can't cut the operating budget. So what the majority is going to focus on this year is they're going to focus on new revenues. All right. This is Lyman Hoffman yesterday in the Senate press conference.
We have been briefed on the governor's proposed operating budget proposal. He has a full dividend proposed in his budget, which, given the forecast for this year, last year it was based upon FY26 on $65 a barrel. This year, that number for the fall forecast is down to $62 a barrel.
Quick. The charter of changes. What did we talk about? Stop basing the budget off pie in the sky. We don't know. We predict, because you suck at predicting. You suck at predicting. You're never right. Why aren't we basing the budget on a 5-year rolling average of what our historical revenues have been? Okay, I digress.
Which makes it more complicated. But given the fact that if we did have a full dividend, we would have over $1.5 billion deficit. I anticipate there's going to be a lot of discussion this year on what the dividend should be, but I would assume from last year's discussion, if we adopted a $1,000 dividend with the governor's proposed budget, that would give us a surplus of about $150 million.
No, it's a surplus. It's a surplus because we cut it down. It's not really a surplus. By the way, that doesn't account for all the extra things, including the supplemental budget, which is over $250 million, from what I understand. We'll see.
That doesn't mean that that money will be available, because there are approximately in excess of $200 million that I see as items that have not been addressed in the governor's budget. I'll just mention the top three. The first is the disparity test, and that is a decision that hasn't been made yet. But if that is ruled against the state, that would be about $71 million.
The disparity test, by the way, has to do with education disparity, and this is that federal test where if we take the federal money, then we've got to choose how much or whether local communities can contribute more to their own local school districts. This is what Brad was talking about 2 or 3 weeks ago when he was talking about, in the lower 48, we've got communities contributing much more to their local schools than they are here, and that's because of this disparity test. I pray to God that this thing goes down in flames, but we'll continue.
The second item is the Medicaid projections. The governor doesn't fully fund that, and that would be another $47 million hit to the operating budget.
I mean, and again, this is what we warned about back in the day when Walker was in office. What's the first thing I said when he pulled out every bell and whistle? Well, it's all free money. Don't worry about it. No, because one day the federal government will stop paying for it, and guess who will be on the hook? You and me. And look at where we are.
Hit to the operating budget. And the last one is the match from the Arms Board to pay for PERS and TERS, which is about $38 million.
And by the way, that's from the previous defined benefits. We're still paying $38 million to make up for the screw up back in the day 20 years ago, and they want to put us back on defined benefits. I mean, the incompetence is on parade, my folks.
That brings us to the question of what the legislature is going to do. We've been dealing with deficit spending for well over 2 decades. We used to have
Lyman's been there for 40 years. Oh, we've been deficit spending for 2 decades. Yeah, whose fault is that?
A substantial amount of money in the constitutional budget reserve account, in excess of $20 billion, but that has gone by the wayside. And
what didn't go by the wayside? You spent it. You He's acting like, oh, it just disappeared. I don't know what happened, man. There was $20 billion in there, and then it was just gone. I don't know what happened. You spent it because you couldn't control your appetite for spending. Let me back that up.
In excess of
No, let me start here.
a substantial amount of money in the constitutional budget reserve account, in excess of 20 billion, but that has gone by the wayside, and we need to continue to save what we have in the constitutional budget reserve as a buffer for rainy day times. And I've said it a couple of times, we shouldn't be spending those dollars on one-time items. We should be looking at revenues for reoccurring expenditures.
I've said it a couple of times now in the last 18 months that we shouldn't spend that on because, I had no problem spending it 10 years ago when we burned through $15 billion. I've got no problem but now I've been saying, as I've always said.
And that is why I think that the Senate had a retreat and made revenue measures as our number one priority. I know that it is.
Listen to that again.
A retreat. The Senate had a retreat and made revenue measures as our number one priority.
Number one priority, revenue measures. You know what that is, right? You know what revenue measures are, right? They're taxes. Taxes are their number one priority. What did I just say yesterday? Taxes are inevitable. Based on what was going on. And all you people out there are like, well, I don't want to talk about taxes. We're just going to talk about... They aren't listening to you. You best get up to speed on this discussion, or guess what? You're going to get screwed right through the ground.
I know that it is a difficult issue to address, but it has to be addressed because we have not been able to reduce the operating budget.
We have not been able to. We have not been able to reduce the operating budget. No, you have been unwilling to do the adult thing. Again, go back to my 10-year thing, the $15 billion that you had all the opportunity in the world to stop it when we had all that money in the bank, but you were unwilling to. It's not that you're unable. It's that you're frightened.
Not been able to reduce the operating budget. The only thing that we've been successful at and criticized heavily on is reducing the dividend from a statutory level down to $1,000. So it's
you should have been criticized for it, but at least he is acknowledging that.
So it's going to be a very difficult question. I don't know. The governor has said that he wants to work with the legislature and address revenue measures. They may be there. I would assume they're probably going to be substantially different, but one way or another, if we are going to continue to provide the services that the people of Alaska have been accustomed to.
That is the major question, isn't it? The level of services that people have become accustomed to. Maybe we've got champagne tastes on a beer budget. Maybe we should learn to find out what the state is actually required to provide and put the other stuff aside. Oh, that see, it's hard when 48% of the people in the state depend on government in one form or another, either for a direct paycheck or for contractual paycheck or for social safety, welfare, or whatever. It's hard when 50% of the people would be hurt by cutting the size and scope of government and lose or have their paycheck affected. I mean, the tipping point may already be beyond where we're at, folks.
Accustomed to that is the million-dollar question: can we come up with revenue measures this session?
Well, I mean, the governor's going to help you there because Alaska Landmine's got a scoop. He says it's saying from multiple sources now that the governor is got his mystery fiscal plan that's supposed to be revealed tomorrow. That's going to include a statewide sales tax, 2% and 4% seasonal sales tax, also an increase in the part of the wellhead tax, and other things. I mean, this is it. I don't have much time. I'm actually over time here, but I wanted to get one more thing because this is the mentality of people in Juneau. And remember, we were talking yesterday about Kathy Giessel. You remember that commercial with Kathy Giessel when she was running for office, and it was her and her husband, and she was stealing his wallet across the table and saying, oh, see, this is what the state just did. They just stole your money in the PFD. Remember that? That was the old Kathy Giessel. And now yesterday, the real true Kathy Giessel came out. And it is a real true. This is exactly what these people think about when it comes down to government spend and what it's there for. What is government spend there for? Not to take care of the people, not to, here's what it is.
Mr. President, this is a really serious issue. There are businesses that are going to close if the next construction year is not funded. And so I'm pretty concerned about it. You know, we talk about funding government to the level that citizens expect. This is funding government so that the private sector can prosper. So
the private sector can prosper. This is funding government so that we can pay the private sector, and we can. This is a prime example of her saying that it's the public sector that reigns supreme, and the private sector is the wagon that drags behind, and that if we don't fund the public sector, well, then the private sector is just going to go to hell.
Funding government so that the private sector can prosper, so the private sector can do the work that we needed to do. DOT doesn't actually build the roads. They contract with contractors. And those are the people that are standing by, waiting to do the work, but had very minimal work this last year. And if they don't have this money for next year, or this coming year, summer of 26, there'll be businesses closing. So this is a top issue.
There'll be businesses closing. Why? Because they built their entire business model off of sucking off the government teat. That's why. This is the mentality, folks. If we don't take the money from you and spend it to have these private companies be lucratized by everything that they're doing, then we're all a failure. Oh, dude, this press conference gets better. The only good news is that Bert Stedman had a little tiff with Kathy Giessel over the defined benefits program, the overly defined benefits program, as he said. I don't have time to get into this today, but I'm going to tell you, this is, they are now, the knives are out. They're saying the quiet part out loud. Taxes, revenue, cuts to the private sector in favor of the public sector, where they serve and put that money up to only a certain few who have latched onto their star. You know, businesses go out of business because they didn't have a proper plan, because they mismanaged their money, because they weren't serving the market. That's what the free market does. And if some company goes belly up because the government doesn't provide a big budget item, that's called the market. I'm just a little heated about this. We're going to be back with more of the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. David Boyle up next.
Your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. I just want to kick a cat at this point. Okay. I mean, seriously, what the actual freaking, what is going on? I mean, we knew it was coming, you know. I mean, I feel vindicated in the one point to say we knew it was coming, but at the same time, they just blatantly and quietly say the quiet part out loud. And Kathy Giessel's over there saying, oh, Oh, and you know what's super ironic about that? And I should have mentioned this while I was on the air. You know what's super ironic about that whole quote from Kathy Giessel, where she's talking about projects and building the roads? You know her husband works for DOT, right? Her husband works for DOT. This is the same woman that impugned Representative Garrett, the fact that he was going to be voting on a PFD and he had 8 kids and that was a conflict of interest. But she's over here advocating to spend all this money through DOT to build these roads, and her husband is one of the bigwigs at DOT. Guys, when are the normies going to wake up? Right? I mean, you guys are all super voters. You guys are all plugged in. You guys all know, you're on top of this state politics and everything else. When are the normies going to wake up to this? I don't know. Maybe it's when they start getting a tax bill, or they start seeing it. And the problem with the sales tax, although it's the best tax that, probably in this whole tax soup, it'd probably be the best choice. The problem with the sales tax is that it's partially hidden, right? Because it's so low, it's a fractional, it's whenever we buy things or what, it's not like you get a tax bill at the end of the year and you crap your pants because you got $1,000 tax bill. It comes out, day by day. So it's more of a hidden type tax. Boy, before I really get started on this, we really need to get over to David Boyle. Hello, David. I'm sorry, my friend. I kind of, when I invited you on the program, none of this stuff was out. And then I listened to the presser afterwards and I was like, damn, I could have taken the whole hour.
Michael, I'm really enjoying it. Keep going. The steam's coming off your head.
Man, you know what? Getting mad doesn't really help anything, but I just feel this righteous indignation on all this stuff. This righteous indignation of, we've been telling you this, God, we've been saying this for years, and all the legislators look at you and go, oh, you poor, pitiful child. Don't worry. We've got this. And then they come up and say, oh, by the way, we've got to do what you said we were going to have to do because we can't control ourselves. I mean,
I have the envelope. I have the envelope here.
Okay.
And the Emmy goes to Michael Dukes. Best performance.
It is performative for sure. But I mean, it's God.
And best supporting actor, Lyman Hoffman.
Man. Yeah. I mean, Lyman, that whole thing about, well, we had $20 billion and it just went by the wayside. Guys. It went by the wayside. He was there with his pom-poms. Rah, rah, spend it. He was in the corner doing all that kind of stuff.
The biggest problem with that is, Michael, as you're well aware, most people believe what he says because I guess they're just tuned into it and they don't read a lot or do their research or listen to other people.
Well, they're, again, the normies, right? And when I say normies, it's not a pejorative. It's just normal people who aren't plugged in and paying attention to anything. They're, more concerned about, going to work and take care of their kids and watching must-see TV Thursday or whatever than they are about figuring out how their state and everything around them works, right? We just have to be those weird few who are fascinated by how the process works.
You're spot on. It's the low and no information voters, and they control usually election outcomes, and that's why we have what we have in Juneau.
Yeah. Well, we're about to get into the educational component, and I'm going to set you up for this. I do want to talk about the Alabama model, but we're going to talk about the new lawsuit that just came out yesterday from the Fairbanks North Star Borough and the Cuspic. Is it Cuspic? Cuspic School District, and some of the other educational targets for this year. And we'll continue. David Boyle, our guest. We're going to continue the Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Wow, I got a little ranty and shouty in that, and I try to never get that kind of, but I'm so frustrated. All right, we're going to talk about education before this whole madness started. Ironically, after the press conference yesterday, also a news report came out that there's a brand new lawsuit filed away. A brand new lawsuit filed by the Fairbanks North Starborough School District and the Cuspec School Districts, seeking an injunction directing the state to fulfill its obligations on funding public schools and providing Alaskans students a sound basic education. The lawsuit points to low proficiency assessment scores, reductions in teaching staff, and elimination of fine arts, career tech, and vocational ed programs as direct impacts due to chronic underfunding. Now, David Boyle is our guest, education advocate, frequent guest on the program talking about educational issues. Frequent underfunding, David. I mean, in the last 20 years, we saw a 35% increase in education. Every year, it was 25, it was 50, it was $70 million over the BSA, but it's been completely underfunded. And it none of those things, low proficiency assessment scores, reducing teaching staff, elimination of fine arts, career tech, voc ed, none of those have anything to do with how the district runs itself. It all has to do with the fact that they have no money. What do you say?
Well, you're right. Alaska spends about, on average, $22,000 per student. Excuse me. And we rank number 6 in the nation for per student spending. And that's not by me. That's by the National Education Association, the teachers union. Go back to a little Coalition for Education Equity that is, let's say, sponsoring this suit. They're not crony capitalists. It's just part of the education cartel in Alaska. They used to be called SEAC. Oh, I don't even remember what it stands for, but they were the backers and the winners of both the Kasuli case and the Moore lawsuits in 2011 and 12, respectively, which said the state wasn't funding enough construction, let's say, of school facilities in rural Alaska. It was all about rural Alaska, nothing about the urban and on the road system schools. And they won those lawsuits, and that changed funding dramatically. So the state had to consider spending even more money for buildings, not for education, but for buildings in rural Alaska. And that's what it does today. I haven't read the lawsuit. However, my first take on it is, if you want to, they want to inflation-proof education funding. Well, if you're going to do that for education funding, let's just inflation-proof the entire state budget, by every department, because I think we're talking about lack of equity here if we only fund the education department, let's say, department. But if you're going to inflation-proof the BSA, I believe there was a bill in the last session, I'm not positive, that actually went nowhere because it wanted to do that.
Yep. Well, and this is not just about inflation proofing, David. This is about more. I mean, they literally say here, oh, that's $700. That was a nice start. That was a nice start, but we need to go. We need more. This is not just about inflation proofing. Now, they do have a complaint in here, which I do agree with in part, that the capital budgets have not included maintenance monies that should have been put forward to maintain some of these facilities. But some of that is also on the schools. Fairbanks North Star, when I was at the Fairbanks North Starborough in the assembly, they had a whole thing where they kept going, well, we don't have enough money to maintain the schools. And we're like, well, where's the funds that you've been given? We created a maintenance fund. And now here we are 10 years later, and they're still saying, well, we just still don't have enough money. Well, we created a maintenance fund for you to take care of that. Where is the responsibility on the local school districts for when they receive these monies that they do look at what Anchorage did. Anchorage just closed 5 schools over the course of the last handful of years. And what did they do with a new school that the people wouldn't bond? The Aurora school, people said no to the bond. So they took $29 million or $30 million out of $100 million grant from the federal government that was supposed to be used to pay down previous bond debt. and they built the school. Well, they started to build the school because they figured out, oh, the $30 million school, they had cost overruns, and now it's $50 million. So now they had to put another $20 million bond out to finish the school. And so people are kind of stuck. So they're closing schools, have declining enrollment, and yet they tear down an old school and build one at a cost overrun, 1.75 times what they said it was going to cost. I mean, is this really a problem of the state, or is this a problem of the districts?
Well, when you shovel money out to various school districts, urban and the rural schools, with no accountability for results, and they're not going to care. The districts, they're just going to ask and demand for more money, and that's what's happening today. The Inlet View School that you just talked about, that, by the way, they finished that school very surprisingly in record time. The Anchorage voters turned down the initial bond for that school. Then they put it out there again, I believe the next year, floated that bond on the ballot, and voters barely approved that bond. And boy, they went running with that money. And there, the interesting thing about Inlet View School, prior to the bond passing, if you go to the budget for the Anchorage School District, they listed 235 students in that school. After the bond was passed, the next budget year, you'll see that there were only 175 students in that school. They lost 60 students somewhere. Now they say they have 185 students, but they built the school probably for 235. But that is Zach Field's district, and he was behind the big push for that. There's no cost control in construction. As you said before about the crony capitalist, in the DOT construction companies. Well, we have exactly that in the K-12 education system. We have the educators, we have the architects, and we have the construction companies. And the tremendous cost overrun for Inlet View should never have been allowed, but the school district doesn't care. They're just going to go back to the state government and say, we need more money. And then guess what? You're going to pay it with your taxes.
No, they told the public that the school was going to cost $31 million, and then all of a sudden, oh no, it's 50. We're partway through it here. It's actually $50 million. We had some cost overruns, so we need another bond. So you guys got to. I mean, David, this is madness. These guys have been given millions and millions and millions. Back in 2015, we were spending more than any other state in the nation on education, and yet we were all in the bottom. And you're telling me that it has to do with money, that it's only money is the only reason? We were spending more than anybody, and we were still in the toilet. And yet we've seen all these other states not spend more, just change some policies, be more efficient with their money, and they have seen their educational standards and their educational achievements rise.
Yeah, you can't, in Alaska, you cannot connect spending with student achievement. There's very little correlation, if any. I don't think there's any correlation. Matter of fact, it might be a negative correlation. You look at the charter schools we have there's per student spending is less than the neighborhood brick and mortar schools. And they have, I mean, I've worked this for years, and it's just so frustrating because it's like David against Goliath. And in this case, David doesn't win, Goliath wins, because I have to, hold on. Let me plug my laptop in. Oops, forgot.
Okay,
but
Dave's going to plug his laptop in.
There we go.
Go ahead.
So, but Michael, it's just so hard. Look at the percentage of people that work and support and rely on the education industry. It's a tremendous number of people. And it's just like you take all the government workers, their spouses, and their friends and neighbors, and compare it to the rest of Alaska. We're getting close to a 50-50 balance. you know.
We are close. I mean, that's the thing. We have what I call the government adjacent businesses, right? Government adjacent industries where they're all doing it. And whether that's the education industrial complex and their union counterparts, whether it's, road construction and road construction companies and DOT, whether it's contractors and school districts and buildings, whether it's all these things, telecoms and all of their government adjacent hundreds of millions of dollars going to telcos like GCI and others. I mean, this is the problem. It's not just a direct government. It's all the government adjacent things that we're seeing here. We've got Rob Myers is doing a whole series on this over on the Alaska story. And he talks about it, that something like 48%, he did some math back in the napkin math and figured that it's something like 48% of the people in the state are dependent on government spend. Whether they're direct employees of a government or the government, or whether they're contractors, or whether they're on social safety, the welfare system, or whatever. And when you got 50% of the people in the state dependent on that spending, they're never going to stop. They're never going to vote themselves a smaller chunk of that. And the problem is arithmetic don't lie. And when you run out of money, then what are you going to do? Well, you're going to do what we just saw. New revenues are going to be 100% focus of this legislative cycle. All right, we're coming up on the break here, David, and I want to get into this Alabama model, which I think, again, is just another prime example. When all you have is spending, Rob Myers says this, when all you have is money, then every answer is spending, right? When all you have is a hammer, every problem is a nail. And when all we have is spending, the question is, how do we spend more? Not how do we deal with policies? How do we change the way we do things? It's always spending. And that's where we're at. And we've been doing that for 40 years in this state, and it's killing us, absolutely killing us. We're going to continue here with David Boyle, our guest. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Oh, Rob just corrected me. That 45% number on the state workforce that depends on government for a paycheck, that doesn't count the social safety net. Remember, what is it, 270,000 Alaskans are on Medicaid? So that doesn't even account for the social safety net. Oh, we're going to be back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Yeah. No, I'm vaping so hard because I just want to hurt somebody. This whole thing right now, David, what was it that Anthony just said? Alaska schools are our version of the Somalian daycare, apparently. Multi-million-dollar operations that aren't actually doing anything. Except here, it's legal. They're scamming people legally. It's the Alaska version of the Somali daycare. 100%. This is the Alaska Somali daycare. That's what we're going to call schools from now on. The Alaska Somali daycare, where they bilk millions and millions of dollars out of people and deliver nothing. Nothing. That's where we're at. Taxes and no PFD, says Kim, won't go over very well with the public. Oh, well, hey, I said that when Walker first took the PFD. I said, that's never going to fly. And look at where we are today, right? Sure, he took the hit and didn't get reelected, but look at where we are today, my friend. But that was, Anthony, that was the best comment of the day. That 100% true. 100%. David, so what do you think? The Alaska Somali daycare is the educational system at this point?
That is a winner, Anthony. Thank you very much. I'm going to use that if you don't mind, and you haven't copyrighted it. But Michael, the unfortunate thing is with a lot of the people that are not the normies, they don't understand, and they connect cannot connect the dots between the PFD and the budget on the other side of the equation. To me, it makes no sense. You have to connect those two. You either increase the or get your full PFD and reduce the government footprint, also known as spending. Or you're going to just keep the baseline budget and then increase it with inflation. Then your PFD is going to go down, and it's just simple math.
Yeah, well, and that's always that dichotomous argument that they've had and that they've made, and they've been successful in building in people's minds is, well, do you want a dividend or do you want taxes, or do you want us to tax people to pay for the dividend? Jack, the dividend is already paid for. What you're doing is you're shuffling the money that was for the dividend off to other things and then saying, oh, now you want us to pay for a dividend. No. It's like saying you had the mortgage payment, but instead you went and blew it on a trip to Vegas, and now you're like, oh, well, how should we pay for this mortgage pay? The money was there, you took it, and you've been running amok with it. That's the thing.
And a lot of Alaskans also, I don't think they understand that. Guess what? K-12 education spending is the number one spending item in the operating budget. In total spending for K-12 in Alaska is over $2 billion when you consider all the funds. And wow.
Something like $2.2 billion. It's the second, behind Medicaid and Health and Social Services. It's the second largest. If you ever look at a pie chart of state spending, it's Health and Social Services and education, and then everything else is these little tiny wedges, right? I mean, that is the major spending in the state. And these are the two things that we're fighting. But again, they need more.
Yeah, and let's look at Medicaid. As you know, and probably most of your listeners are aware, the original Medicaid was a 50-50 split between the feds and the states. When Governor Walker expanded Medicaid, guess what? The split is 90% fed and 10% state. But that isn't in concrete. That can change any day. It can go down to 70-30. It could go down to the original 50-50. And the other thing we should remember about Medicaid expansion is Governor Walker did that on his own. Governor Parnell shot it down to start with. Governor Walker came into office. He didn't go to the legislature. He didn't issue an executive order. It was just an administration order.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The Governor Dunleavy could say, hey, guess what? We're doing away with it.
And guess what happened in the big, beautiful bill? What's the first thing they started doing? Cutting into Medicaid.
Yeah.
And that's where all those money. And what did we say when Walker did this? There'll be a day when they don't have the money to do it anymore, and it'll start. Oh, no, that'll never happen. Oh, no, that'll never happen.
A little bit of background on Medicaid expansion was Valerie Davidson, who was the leader of Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium. She was the big push behind that. Big push. And because the Bureau of Indian Affairs was not funding the health care for Alaska Natives and Indians in the country, so it was only about 50%. So she wanted to use Medicaid expansion to backfill that to get up to 100%. And you see the results of that over on their campus.
Yeah,
in Anchorage. I mean, it looks like a college campus, but and so they try to enroll every one of their tribe members, or the Alaska Natives rather, into Medicaid under the Medicaid expansion rule, whether or not they meet the income levels for that. So there's a little bit of Somali fraud probably going on right here in this state regarding Medicaid expansion.
Not surprising. Rob Meyer says lots of medical businesses built on Medicaid spending too. Yeah, no, it's just another one of those government adjacent industries. Here we go.
Go ahead.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yep, that's it. That's us. That's me. We're continuing now talking about education. Anthony wins the internet today with his comment. Alaska schools are our version of the Somalian daycare, apparently. Multi-million-dollar operations that aren't actually doing anything. which is true. The Alaska Somali daycare system is up and running, and we're good to go. But there are other states out there, David, who have made a difference. They've done more with less. They have not increased their budgets and instead have changed policies, changed the way that they do things, and they've had significant success. We've all heard about the Mississippi Miracle, right? Which is the Reading Act in Mississippi, which is the Alaska Reads Act is based on. That brought them up from 49th to 9th in the nation with no additional monies. It was simply policy changes and teaching changes. And now Alabama has its own system that they're calling the Math Miracle. This is the Numeracy Act, which is the math version of the Reads Act, and they have done something very similar. Walk us through this.
Well, yeah, it's called the Math Miracle, and they passed a law called the Numeracy Act in 2022, which has improved their students' math achievement dramatically, according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress test, the NAEP test. And the other thing about this is they only funded it, Michael, with little over $19 million for the entire state of Alabama. So let's look at what happened. So Alabama in 2017 ranked 47th out of 53. Now people say, well, wait, there aren't 53 states. Well, it includes Washington, D.C., the DOD schools, and guess what? Puerto Rico, which is dead last. Thank God for Puerto Rico now. So Alabama was ranked number 47 out of 53. Alaska was ranked number 50 in 2017 out of 53. They were virtually, their scores were, there was no significant difference in their scores. But let's jump to see what happened after they put their Numeracy Act, their math to improve mathematics, in effect in Alabama. In 2024, Alabama went from 47 to 32 out of all the states. Alaska remained number 50 out of 53 states in jurisdiction. The other interesting thing about it is, remember, we had the pandemic going on between 2017 and 24.
Right.
The national average actually went down 2 points, 239 to 237. Now, the points are very interesting in that it's said, the researchers say that for 10 points to every 10 points is a difference of 1 grade academic year in school. So, you know, they both decreased over the same period, Alaska and Alabama. But Alabama's fourth graders, in 1 year, there was a difference between Alabama's fourth graders in math and Alaska's fourth graders 1 whole year in learning. So Alaska had a score of 226 in 2024. Alaska had a score of 226. Alabama had a score of 236. So in effect, Alabama's fifth graders are like Alaska's fourth graders when it comes to math.
Right, backwards. They're a year ahead. Right, they're a year ahead. Yeah,
yes, they're a year ahead. Yeah.
Well,
thank you.
What was interesting in those numbers is that while Alabama jumped 4 points in that 7-year ranking from 232 to 236, Alaska actually went backwards from 230 to 226. And so that's where you get that 10-point gap between the two of them. And, all they did was change how they taught math. That's all they did.
Yes, it's all they did. And even more interesting data point in this is in 2019, Alabama went from 52nd in the nation to 32nd in the nation, 20 whole places. So it was the largest improvement in the country. And I don't know what happened there. It's just, it was right before the pandemic, 2019. So going from 52nd in 2019 in math to 32nd, I don't think that's ever been done even in reading for any state.
Right.
Now, Mississippi passed their Reads Act, let's call it, back in 2013. Alabama just passed this Numeracy Act for math in 2022. And I read the bill. Alaska has a bill in the hopper right now by Rep. Underwood. and it's 6 pages long. Alabama's bill is 62 pages long. Yeah, it's and like Alaska's, it's double spaced, so you can read it, but it's the same pitch. So there's no difference there. But I read through it, and they have closed every loophole that the education industry could think of. I mean, they have nailed it down. It's just unbelievable. They've nailed down what they have to teach, how they have to teach it, the numbers by every grade level, K through 5, K through 8, or K through 5. Sorry.
And they're basically moving it to evidence-based, standards-based math. Instead of aligning it with Common Core, they're giving it evidence-based math, which is like Saxon math, and that's how we've only got about 3 minutes here, Dave. So that's how they've done it, right?
Yes, and Alaska's bill, House Bill 237, is supposed to align with current state standards, which are basically Common Core standards in most respects. The Alabama law, the first couple of sentences in the Alabama law says you cannot use Common Core standards. Another thing is the enforcement tool in the Alabama law is, guess what? If a school after a couple of years doesn't improve in their math after they've given extra resources by the state, the board has to decide the school can be closed, all the staff can be fired and replaced, or they can go be turned into a charter school. You don't see any of that. That would never pass in our bill here in Alaska.
Well, and we already have some version of the Numeracy Act happening in some of the private and charter schools, right? You mentioned it here. Anchorage School District uses the Saxon math type program. Northern Lights ABC, Aquarian Charter School, and Birchwood all score well above 60% proficiency in 4th grade math. But by contrast, all the students statewide are half that in math. So it is working. We could see where it's working. David, you got about 90 seconds here. Give me your final thoughts on all this educational stuff we've talked about today.
Well, this House Bill 237 is a great bill. It also has a companion bill in the Senate. I don't remember the number, but former Senator Shelley Hughes filed that bill last year. It includes standards, evidence-based standards. It includes professional development, so teachers can be brought up to speed. It includes resources as well. It doesn't say how many resources as well. The alignment curriculum has to be aligned with the state standards, which hopefully doesn't mean Common Core standards. And it has accountability. And the other thing it does, it informs parents if their student is not proficient in math at a grade level. And it provides also extra tutoring, summer school, and things like that to bring every student up to speed. Each student has to be identified individually as well.
This is the kind of thing we should be looking at. I mean, how do we get more money, but how do we do more with less? And look at people who have done it and we copy them. That's how it should have been done. I mean, the fact that it took 6-7 years for the READS Act to be passed in this state is insane. Anyway, David Boyle, thank you so much for coming out. Hold the line for a second. Folks, we got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. But that's it, right, David? I mean, they did all these things, and this has only been in place for 2 years, and they jumped 10 points in 2 years, essentially. I mean, that's a pretty amazing achievement.
It is, Michael. I don't know how they did it, actually. I just don't know. But, I think our students are just as smart as the Alabama students. May not be as good at football, but we're definitely better than Alabama students. And this article I wrote is on the Alaska story.
Yeah, it's a great piece. Let me link this here for folks in the chat room. If you haven't had a chance to go out and read it, you should read this story over on the Alaska story about the Alabama math miracle and why we should be picking it. It should not be another 9 years, folks, or 8 years from now until we actually implement this. That's how long it took for the READS Act, right? Because it was 2013. She started working on it in 2014 or 15, and finally it got passed in 2024.
You don't mean the Alaska READS Act, do you?
I mean the Alaska READS Act, right?
No, Alaska Reads Act was passed in 2022.
2022. Okay. But it was 6 or 7, 8 years, right, before they got it through.
It was a long time. I don't know if it's that long, but it took a lot of work behind the scenes. And Bob Griffin was the big pusher and sponsor of that, let's say. He was the effective leader on the Alaska Reads Act. And it only passed by one vote. That tells you a lot about the legislature right there.
Yeah. Well, it tells you who they're beholden to. We know who they're beholden to. They're beholden to the lobby that wants more money for what they got. They don't want to change their look at how hard they fought against policy changes last year in the debate over the base student allocation number. All they wanted was a few different policy changes, and they fought that tooth and nail.
I don't know, Michael, but if there's a whole slug of bills that have been introduced. There's 5 of them that I see right here on education. Another one is the correspondent study program assessment, where they want every correspondence student be required to take the state assessment test.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of that going on. Reads Act was first introduced in 2014 by Senator Mike Dunleavy, passed in 2022. Took 8 years for it to pass.
Fool me on that one.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's the thing. We had a solution, and instead of jumping into it, we fiddle farted around for 8 years until we finally passed it by one single vote.
It didn't require much financing. It was piddly financing compared to what they do otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and of course, they're still crying now that they didn't get enough money to fund. It's about the money. It's always about the money. And
we need to incentivize good behavior. The school districts that are doing well, give them more money. The others that aren't, just hold it static.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, David Boyle, thank you so much for coming on board. As always, my friends, we appreciate you being part of it today. Thank you for coming on. And again, I apologize for bogarting the first segment of the show today, but I kind of had to. All right. Thanks, David.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thanks for coming on board today. All right, we're waiting for Zack Gottshall to be joining us here in just a moment. We're going to get this thing rolling. I want to go back to this Kathy Giessel thing. I just want to go back because, again, the thing that I didn't mention that should have been mentioned, and I didn't mention it at the time, but the fact that this woman is the same woman in there that was impugning Garrett Nelson's character and basically saying that it was a conflict of interest for him to be able to vote on permanent fund dividends because he has 9 children. That was the argument. And yet she's got her husband working over at DOT, and she has the audacity, the balls to say something like this.
Mr. President, this is a really serious issue. There are businesses that are going to close if the next construction year is not funded. And so I'm pretty concerned about it. You know, we talk about funding government to the level that citizens expect. This is funding government so that the private sector can prosper, so the private sector can do the work that we needed to do. DOT doesn't actually build the roads. They contract with contractors.
And of course, they all get a cut for contracting with contractors. There's cost to that, of course, of which people at DOT, like her husband, are part of. Yeah.
DOT doesn't actually build the roads. They contract with contractors. And those are the people that are standing by, waiting to do the work, but had very minimal work this last year. And if they don't have this money for next year, or this coming year, summer of 26, there'll be businesses closing. So this is a top issue.
I say let the businesses close and decrease the surplus population. Bah humbug, right? I mean, that's the free market, baby. Is it government's job to keep those businesses open? Is that what it's all about? Right? Is it government's job to do all these things? Okay. All right. I just got word from Zack Gottshall that he's not going to make it. He's come down with a flu or something. So guess what we get to talk about in the next hour? Oh, Lord. Here we go. Let's get to it. This ought to be fun. Wow. All right. So we're going to get into this here in the next hour. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We will we'll continue. Now I got to scramble to pull my thoughts together because I'm this is where I get agitated. This is where I get agitated. Here we go. Let's do it.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, yada, yada, yada. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, and we were supposed to be talking to Zack Gottshall this morning, but I was in such a heated in such a heated frenzy in hour one that I missed his text message where he said he's come down with a flu and just is not up to having the interview with us today. So we're gonna put that off. Hopefully we'll have him back on the program next week. That's the poll today. But the good news is that leaves us this full hour. Boy, people in the chat room are just cheering for me to blow a blood vessel. They're literally like, oh, go, yeah, go, because of what happened yesterday. And you ask yourself, Michael, what happened yesterday? Well, the legislative session started, and they were going to have a joint meeting of the joint meeting of the two, and they put that off. That's now going to happen on Thursday instead of yesterday, where they were going to try and override the veto. Interestingly enough, that takes 3 days out of the calendar because they have to do it within 5 days. But we'll see what happens. Wait a second. Gail Moore in the chat room. Gail Kuntz just said in the chat room, wow, she said, wow, that flu came on fast. He was fine at the D7 meeting last night. Look, it can happen. It can happen. I'm not gonna cast any aspersions here. But he says he's sick. He's sick. It's one of those things. Anyway, so where was I? Joint meeting. That's going to be put off till Thursday. We'll see if they're going to try and override him on the SB 113 and the other vetoes that he had. But the Senate majority had a press conference yesterday. And my friends, the gloves are off. The truth is now being spoken aloud. They have now decided that they are going to go for. They're not even going to try to stall spending anymore. Now it's all about revenue. Now, the only good news out of this whole thing, by the way, and I haven't had time to pull all the audio out of this, I'm going to today and tomorrow, I'm going to be pulling more of the audio out of this press conference because this thing is freaking gold, man. This thing is freaking gold. The only bright side to this whole thing was the walrus, Senator Bert Stedman, who got into a little bit of a tussle with Kathy Giessel over defined benefits. What he lovingly called overly defined benefits. Anyway, he's got something to say on this. And he is not pleased with this idea of defined benefits. And so that's going to be probably a whole show or an hour unto itself when we get to it, because there's a lot of good back and forth between Kathy Giessel and Bert Stedman on this. But that was the only real bright spot in the whole thing yesterday. All right. Now, last night I went out on Facebook after I was done watching all the different clips and things that I could see, and was working on it. And I told the Facebook audience, all the followers, that I said I was heated. Today's show is going to be fire. We need to get into it. And then, of course, I realized I had a full raft of guests. But here we are, hour 2, no guest. It's fine. So buckle up, Buttercup, because here's where it's going to get interesting. Your critters down in the legislature who've been telling you for years that don't worry, they're going to take care of you. They've got this handled. Wait, let me rewind. Let me go back less than a year ago to another Senate presser where we were talking about these things. Let's go back to that 1 year ago and hear what our legislators, our leaders had to say on this.
So this is an amazingly difficult situation we are in, and we're asking pretty much impossible things of our finance committee. We know that we've got oil prices going down. It could be somewhere in the mid-60s, possibly, or more. We know that we have contracts that we knew were coming. They were coming. We didn't know how much it would be. Possibly within the $45 or more million range. We know that the federal government may be cutting. We understand they may be cutting up to 5%, maybe more. So there's just a lot of unknowns right now, Mark. I think we simply can't ask those questions at this time. Senator Stedman.
Well, the Senate president listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. And I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena. We see them coming. We're going to try to deal with them.
We got all these headwinds, and those were, by the way, the things that Stevens mentioned were a fraction of the things that we're facing today. I mean, just a small component of the things that we're facing today. But don't worry. I don't want the public to focus on them.
Senator Stedman.
Well, the Senate president listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena. We see them coming. We're going to try to deal with them.
We see them coming. We got you, boo. Don't worry. We know. We could see it. We know it's coming. I mean, we created it. We've done all the things that have put us in this situation. But don't worry. We got you. Right? That was less than a year ago. That was May of last year. And now we fast forward to this press conference. Now, by the way, this is after, and I love this. This is after Lyman Hoffman. I should have pulled the article where he says to the ADN, he was just shocked, I tell you, to discover that we're going to be running deficit. I mean, how did that happen? I have no idea how that is. Lyman Hoffman, 40 years in the legislature. Right? Remember back when you were 10 or 12 years old? Lyman Hoffman was in the legislature. You were riding your bike to the store to buy some bubble gum or whatever. He was in the legislature. But he's just shocked, I tell you, that this is what's going on. So then Lyman Hoffman, he gets to talk yesterday about what's going on. And he basically says that, we haven't figured out how to cut anything out of the budget. We can't cut anything. We just can't cut the operating budget. We just can't do it. And we can't even afford really $1,000 PFD. But they can tell you that the one thing that we've got now, one thing that they're going to focus on, that the Senate majority, they went on a retreat. How much did that cost? They went on a retreat and they all decided and all came together in kumbaya, and they've decided that their number one goal for this year is new revenue, which is taxes, by the way. That's new revenue is taxes. Here's Lyman Hoffman, and I'm going to be interrupting this, but here's Lyman Hoffman yesterday in the Senate press conference talking about what we can expect this year.
We have been briefed on the governor's proposed operating budget proposal. He has a full dividend proposed in his budget, which, given the forecast for this year, last year it was based upon FY26 on $65 a barrel. This year, that number for the fall forecast is down to $62 a barrel, which makes it more complicated.
Okay, and so again, I know I'm repeating myself from the first hour, but when are we going to stop building budgets based on pie in the sky guesswork? Right? I mean, we built the last year's budget on $65 a barrel. We were building this year's budget on 60. We're just guessing what's coming in the future. Instead of doing something with solid numbers like, why don't we go back and look at what our last 5 years of revenue have been and run an average of that up and down? It'll help even things out. Why do we do? No, we couldn't possibly. We've got to. This is the whole Sean Parnell. We're going to base it on $105 a barrel oil when oil was down in the high 70s. I mean, this is the same kind. This is how we got into this situation. Because that was the Parnell years where we spent $15 billion out of savings because we couldn't figure out how to balance a freaking budget.
A full dividend, proposed in his budget, which, given the forecast for this year, last year it was based upon FY26 on $65 a barrel. This year, that number for the fall forecast is down to $62 a barrel, which makes it more complicated. But given the fact that if we did have a full dividend, we would have over $1.5 billion deficit.
I will note, by the way, again, for those of you who are in the cheap seats or not paying attention, the dividend is fully funded. The money for the dividend is there. That is the 50-50 split of the earnings of the earnings reserve. That is, the money is there, but instead of spending the money on the dividend, as is ascribed by law, they have decided to take that money and spend it on something else. In this case, other services and other things that they'd want to do, so that they don't have to come back to you and say, you need to pay for those services. It's hidden. It's hiding the tax of what it costs. That the dividend's paid for. The money is there, but they spent it on something else.
I anticipate there's going to be a lot of discussion this year on what the dividend should be, but I would assume from last year's discussion, if we adopted a $1,000 dividend with the governor's proposed budget, that would give us a surplus of about $150 million.
Now, somebody in the chat room just said, David in the chat room, or Chris just said, the dividend was never broken until Walker and Wilikowski fixed it. And he's right. You know what was broken? State spending. State spending. They didn't have enough to do all the things that they wanted to do. That's why Walker vetoed part of the PFD. Because they didn't have enough. they were going to have to draw from the CBR to balance the budget again, and there wasn't much money left in the CBR. And so instead of facing those hard truths, that they decide that's why Walker vetoed that part of the PFD. And then we didn't do anything with that money for like 3 years. And then finally they started tapping into it. Sorry, that was a sidebar.
That doesn't mean that that money will be available, because there are approximately in excess of $200 million that I see as items that have not been addressed in the governor's budget. I'll just mention the top three. The first is the disparity test, and that is a decision that hasn't been made yet. But if that is ruled against the state, that would be about $71 million.
The disparity test, by the way, is what Brad Keithley has been talking about when it comes to local school funding. In the lower 48, the schools in the communities in the lower 48 fund their schools significantly more, like 40% compared to 20% in the state of Alaska. The only reason that we are maxed out and actually communities have caps, which they can't contribute more to, is because of this federal disparity test that was the hook in the money. This federal money that was going to the state will only give you this money if you perform these disparity tests. That's what that's about. So, I mean, the disparity test needs to go away. Communities, if they want to fund their schools more, should be able to. And again, if you look at the comparisons in the lower 48, every community is funding their schools more than Alaska is. Because we took that filthy federal lucre and they're basically making us do what's going on right now.
The second item is the Medicaid projections. The governor doesn't fully fund that, and that would be another $47 million hit to the operating budget.
Now, again, the Medicaid, remember, Bill Walker unilaterally decided to sign us up on all these optional Medicaid programs. That wasn't something that the legislature did. It wasn't even an executive order. It was just an administrative thing. And what was the first thing that I said when that happened? This is going to break us. You've taken every optional Medicaid well, Mike, you don't understand. The federal government's going to pay. No, we only have to pay 10% of it. We only had to pay 10% of it then. What did I say? That there's going to come a time where we've seen plenty of programs that started out from the federal government where they picked up 90 and we had to pay 10, and it was all well and good until they stopped funding it at that level. And what happened in the big beautiful bill? Well, significant cut to Medicaid. Why? Because the federal government's broke too. And now all of a sudden we're going to be on the hook for all this stuff that just like I told you so. I told you so. So, yeah. Now, by the way, the thing he doesn't mention, was that 3? I think that was 3. Well, the thing he doesn't mention is the supplemental budget. What is a supplemental budget, Mike? It's second budget. It's like second breakfast. It's second budget. It's when you have a budget for the year, but you can't stay within it, so you spend more than what you were budgeted, and so you have to have a supplemental budget for the following year to pay for the previous. And what I'm hearing is that supplemental budget is somewhere in the range of $250 million.
And the last one is the match from the Arms Board to pay for PERS and TERS, which is about $38 million.
Okay, I was sorry. I thought he was done, but he's not. The Arms Board. If you want an example of why we should not go back to defined benefits, this is it.
And the last one is the match from the Arms Board to pay for PERS and TERS, which is about $38 million.
$38 million. This is paying for the previous defined benefits. The ones from before. The ones where we still have a $7 billion liability on. Don't worry. It'll be fine. If we do new ones, we've learned our lesson this time. It won't happen. Don't worry. All right. I'm up against the break. I'm way beyond the break, in fact. So we're going to continue here in just a moment. And I'm going to continue. We haven't even gotten to the best part, folks. We have not even got to the best part. This is going to be a spicy legislative session. I can tell you that right now. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Now, Rob is trying to correct me here. He said it's not a supplemental of $250 million as an extra spending. It's $250 million that we've already allocated but don't have the money because oil prices drop, because they missed their revenue forecast. That is true in part, but also supplementals do include things like unintended, like wildfires and some of those other things, right, Rob? I mean, it's not always just we didn't allocate enough money or we do it. But, I mean, it's a little bit of everything, right? We missed our goal, so we're short of money. And also we had some unexpected expenses or things that we couldn't do, so we had to spend some extra money. Those are all part of it, right, Rob? So, I mean, that's how I've always understood the supplemental. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I've always understood it. I mean, this is where we're at, folks. The gloves are off. We haven't even gotten to the part for the people who just tuned in this hour. We haven't even gotten to the part where things are about to get real. About to get real. Because their whole goal at this point is to generate new revenue, to keep it hidden, keep it secret, keep it safe. Right? What am I talking about? The taxes, man. They want to keep it hidden. They want to keep it under the radar. That's why they love the PFD, because if you don't see it and you never hit your pocketbook and all you see is whatever they leave you, they withhold it like a withholding tax. Oh, it's so much better that way. You never really feel it because you never really had it. And so it's a secret tax. It's a stealth tax. Stealth. I mean, some of us feel it because we do the math on it, but the vast majority of Alaskans, oh man, and don't talk to them about taxes. We'll just never have taxes. Rob says there's still a supplemental of $70 million for federal highway match disaster relief in the typhoon. Then some want to refill the $200 million in the higher education fund as well. Again, it's a true up of the previous year. That's essentially what it is. The legislature will not call it a tax. It will be called a fee. Yeah, it'll be called something. It'll be called new revenue. I mean, they don't want to use the dreaded T word, man. They don't want to use that word. Except when they're talking about the PFD. And then they'll use the word. Do you want a tax or do you want a PFD or do you want a tax? Do you want to tax people for a PFD? Again, that's a dichotomous statement because the PFD was already fully funded. You decided to take the money out of that pot and put it towards something else. That is the problem. Okay. Oh my God. If this is how the whole session's going to be, I'm going to need to take some Xanax or something. I mean, I don't even have a prescription, but I'm going to have to take some. Oh, man. Taxing the Alaska public is like the Grinch having that little dog pull the sleigh. Well, I mean, it still worked for him, right? Let me go back to highlight some of the best comments. Yeah, roughly 45% of the state's workforce depends on government for a paycheck, and that's not counting the social safety net. That's true. Yeah, I'm going to have to up the dosage on the vape for sure. I'm going to have to go to, 1,000,000 milligrams of whatever. Anthony said, if the government shuts down this is in regards to what Kathy Giesel was talking about, which we're going to go back over for the hour two people. If the government shuts down and your business goes bankrupt, your business model sucks and never had real legs to stand on to begin with. Let's keep it real. Anthony, how could you? How could you? Brandy, you can always count on Randy. Randy says, I'd rather have my PFD cut than have a state income tax pounded into you're going to get both, Randy. You're going to lose the PFD and there's going to be a tax. Welcome to it. You're part of the reason why.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. We're going to continue here. We've been talking about the Senate press conference yesterday. And Lyman Hoffman lining us out on all the problems of having to pay a PFD and how we're in dire straits. Surprise. That's what it was all about. And how the governor's plan, if all they paid was $1,000 dividend, he's painting the picture, by the way, for those of you who aren't keeping up, that he's painting the picture that if they had $1,000 dividend, they'd still have $170 million surplus, but not really. So what he's basically saying is we're probably not even going to get $1,000 dividend this year. That's what he's saying, which lines out with what I've been telling you for the last year, which is I think last year was the last big year of dividends, and we'd be lucky this year if we get anything. We might get it's an election year, so we'll probably get maybe a $300 or $500 dividend. I doubt we'll get much more than that. And by next year, good luck. Good luck. Anyway, Lyman Hoffman continues to roll the greatest hits here. He just talked about how we've got the three top things that aren't funded in the budget that need to be funded, including the PERS and TERS obligation from the past defined benefit program. And he continues.
And the last one which is about $38 million. That brings us to the question of what the legislature is going to do. We've been dealing with deficit spending for well over 2 decades. We used to have
I will highlight the fact that Lyman Hoffman is the longest serving senator or legislator in the legislature. 40 years. So when he says we've been dealing with deficit spending for the last 2 decades, guess who's been front and center that whole time? Yes, you guessed it. Lyman Hoffman.
A substantial amount of money in the constitutional budget reserve account, in excess of $20 billion, but that is gone by the wayside. And
the $20 billion in the constitutional budget reserve didn't go by the wayside, Lyman. You spent it. He just act like it just disappeared. He just act like it just disappeared. He was there the whole freaking time.
For well over.
I'm sorry, I need to restart that whole thing.
We've been dealing with deficit spending for well over 2 decades. We used to have a substantial amount of money in the constitutional budget reserve account, in excess of $20 billion, but that is gone by the wayside, and
You spent
we
it.
need to continue to save what we have in the constitutional budget reserve as a buffer for rainy day times. And I've said it a couple of times. We shouldn't be spending those dollars on one-time items. We should be looking at revenues for reoccurring expenditures.
I've been saying it a couple times now. We shouldn't be spending those on one-time. He had no problem in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, had no problem spending that at that time. But now he's telling you, now he's telling you, I've told you a couple times now, we shouldn't be spending that on but you know, I mean, again, we are looking at what was I'm sorry, what was that, Bert?
Senator Stedman.
Well, the Senate president listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena. We see them coming. We're going to try to deal with them.
I mean, we see them coming. I mean, we created them. We created these headwinds. All the things that we've done over the last 20, all those chickens are coming home to roost. Don't worry. We see it. Don't worry. We got you, boo. We got it handled. Don't worry. Lyman Hoffman's told you a couple times at least not to. I mean, he's told us a couple times, not to do that.
A couple of times. We shouldn't be spending those dollars on one-time items. We should be looking at revenues for reoccurring expenditures, and that is why I think that the Senate.
Here it comes. Here it comes.
The Senate had a retreat and made revenue measures as our number one priority. I know that it is
they had a retreat and they made revenue measures their number one. Revenue measures, for those of you, again, who are Reddit users, that's taxes. Taxes. They have made taxation their number one priority.
Revenue measures as our number one priority. I know that it is a difficult issue to address, but it has to be addressed because we have not been able to reduce the operating budget.
We have not been able to, which is again code for none of us want to be the adult in the room and tell the angry mob that we can't feed them anymore. None of us want to tell the 45% of people who are dependent on government outside of the welfare programs, the 45% who are dependent on, we're not going to tell them anymore that the gravy train is over. So instead, we would rather face you and tell you that we have to tax you. This is it.
Not been able to reduce the operating budget.
Unwilling, not unable to, unwilling to.
The only thing that we've been successful at and criticized heavily on is
rightfully so. Success. I mean, you could just see it. He's like, oh, we've been criticized heavily on. Wait.
Successful at and criticized heavily on is reducing the dividend from a statutory level down to $1,000.
And you act like that's that's the only thing we've been successful at and heavily criticized for. Yes, because you guys don't have the balls to stand up and tell people we cannot be all things to all people and we can't spend more than we take in. That's the only thing you've been successful at and taken righteous criticism on.
So it's going to be a very difficult question. I don't know. The governor has said that he wants to work with the legislature and address revenue measures. They may be there. I would assume they're probably going to be substantially different, but one way or another, if we are going to continue to provide the services that the people of Alaska have been accustomed to.
We're going to provide you services that people of Alaska have been accustomed to. Regardless of the fact that we have a champagne taste on a beer budget. Here's the thing. The level of service we've been accustomed to, is it constitutional? Is it constitutionally mandated? Are we doing too much? I mean, you people couldn't even defund vacant positions that have been vacant for years. You couldn't even close a single program that hadn't served any citizens in years, was still costing whatever it was, $50,000 a year that Will Stapp talked about. And you guys couldn't even find the chutzpah, the political will to even close that program down. Oh, but that's the level of service that Alaskans have grown accustomed to. It's on us. It's our fault.
People of Alaska have been accustomed to that. That is the $1 million question. Can we come up with revenue measures this session?
So, my friends, the quiet part is being said out loud. Can we come up with revenue measures this session? And the Alaska Landmine is breaking a story. They broke it last night. Or early this morning, that according to multiple sources, Jeff Landfield is saying according to multiple sources, the governor is going to have a plan that includes oil and gas taxes, corporate income tax, a statewide sales tax, and a constitutional amendment to combine the permanent fund and the corpus and the earnings as well. I mean, doesn't this just sound delightful? Doesn't this just sound delightful? Looks like the governor's giving the legislature some political cover. They could just say, well, the governor proposed it and we just approved it. We didn't have to, any other time the governor proposes a budget and they're like, no, it's our budget. We'll do it. It's yours. But here it is, man. Here it is. And then we come to Kathy Giesel. OMG. We're going to continue here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Don't forget, you can always check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. If you want to be here during the commercial breaks, trust me, you probably want to be here during the commercial breaks. We'll be back with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Kevin. Sorry. I haven't been paying attention to the chat room because I'm just so... one of the symptoms of covert narcissism, says Kevin, is creating a problem and then complaining about how it is affecting you. Boy, he's right on the verge of that, isn't he, Kevin? I mean, Lyman just like, the one that we were successful at. We were successful at. It's the one thing we
successful at and criticized heavily on is reducing the dividend from a statutory level down to $1,000.
I mean, it's the one thing we were successful at. Deshana says, gone by the wayside. WTF, where did it all go? Hello, I think we know. Yeah, I mean, we spent it. We spent it. Tim Horn asks the multi-million-dollar question. What's Hoffman's net worth? Well, Tim, I recommend you hook up with Willie Keppel here in the chat room. Willie will tell you exactly what Hoffman's net worth is, what it started out at, and where it is today. And I think you will find it highly enlightening. Oh, I mean, highly. In fact, Willie Keppel's in here. Willie's got another comment. Willie says, don't forget Bryce Edgman and his agenda to eliminate the PFD and transfer the money to the unions that can't teach ABC 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Rob says, how does Randy feel about getting taxed to support a business? I mean, Randy doesn't know. Randy's got a good heart, but Randy just, he can't see the forest through the trees, unfortunately. That's the problem. Kevin said you should shift Firearms Friday to Thursday for this week. You'll have much to talk about on Friday. You know what? I'm going to need the whole weekend to process everything so that we can crack into it on Monday and Tuesday. I mean, that's the thing. I just can't, I just can't do it. I'm just scrolling backwards here to see if there's anything else that I missed right off the bat here. Okay. Lots of good sound bites from that tidbit of speech. I mean, that is a 3 minute and 40-second sound bite that literally took us 25 minutes to get through because of just the commentary. This whole press conference is gold, folks. Solid freaking gold. And you should go back and you should watch it yourself. You should it's a 40-minute presser. You should go back. It's over on KTOO. Let me copy the link address here and I'll post it up in the chat room. You guys should go watch this for yourself. It's solid gold, man. Solid gold. And they're laying out a plan for what we're, how we're going to be screwed this year. I mean, they're going to right through the pooch. That's exactly what's going to happen. Tim said it's a nationwide problem with society. They're treating our accounts like it was a credit card. Not many people these days live without credit card debt. The price we pay when you fail at simple math. Truth. Terry. Sorry. Terry said, I need Advil. Sorry. Terry. We won't see Terry much around here. She'll spend 1 day a week on the show and she'll spend the rest of the week with a headache. Jedediah says, community assisted payments, free monies to communities from the state. Oh yeah. Oh, they love the CAP. They love that. And then the assemblies in these various communities, it's like Christmas, man. They can give it out to all their favorite organizations. Yeah. Oh, they love it. We need to start checking couch cushions for money that went by the wayside, said Brian. Remember that year? What was it? The last year of the Walker administration? They found $270 million in the couch cushions. It was in some account that they'd forgotten about or something. You remember that? I do. I remember I actually wrote a newsletter back when I thought I was going to be more proactive and I was going to write newsletters, and I wrote a newsletter about the couch cushion money. God, that's crazy. All right. We're about to go,
Mr. President.
Yeah, we're about to go to talk about the next thing here as well. Man, who needs caffeine at this point? I'm living on hate and discontent. Let's get to it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. I'm sorry. David Boyle just dropped a link in the chat room. Here we are talking about all this stuff. And of course, we mentioned it earlier, but there's this lawsuit that's being put out. 2 school districts are suing the state, saying that the state of Alaska fails to meet its constitutional obligations on public education. And of course, one of them is the Fairbanks North Starborough School District, which I have some intimate knowledge of, having served on the borough assembly for 5 years, and know that their problem here, that not part of their problem, but the problem here is its mismanagement of money on the part of the Fairbanks North Starborough. I mean, I can guarantee you that's exactly what's going on. Interestingly enough, the other district is the Cuspec School District. And David just dropped some facts in the chat room. The one of the districts on this lawsuit, the Cuspec School District, spends $61,704 per student in state money. That doesn't count Fed money. $61,000 per student. But it's not enough. It's not enough. It's never enough for these people, right? Now, there's a little bit of a political dust-up the other day when Garrett Nelson was appointed to the legislature by the governor. And Kathy Gottshall, the Weasel, she made a comment in her newsletter to her constituency where she impugned the character of Garrett Nelson by basically saying, this is a guy that's going to vote on the PFD and he has 9 children. Therefore, he has a conflict of interest. And he put out a very nice response from his office that basically said, that's ridiculous. And, she should, retract that. I mean, as a fellow Republican, she should. Anyway, she basically said it's a conflict of interest. Now, I'm going to play the following clip, and I want you to keep in mind one thing. Kathy Gottshall's husband works as a functionary, one of the higher-ups in DOT, the Department of Transportation and Highway Development, okay? Kathy Gottshall said this at the press conference yesterday.
Mr. President, this is a really serious issue. There are businesses that are going to close if the next construction year is not funded. And so I'm pretty concerned about it. We talk about funding government to the level that citizens expect. This is funding government so that the private sector can prosper, so the private sector can do the work that we needed to do. DOT doesn't actually build the roads. They contract with contractors. And those are the people that are standing by, waiting to do the work, but had very minimal work this last year. And if they don't have this money for next year, or this coming year, summer of 26, there'll be businesses closing. So this is a top issue.
Right? I mean, no conflict of interest there. Her husband, I'm sure, part of the team that manages all these, but you can't. No, can't possibly. And you know what? Here's the worst part. The worst part of this whole thing is she has completely exposed the mentality of most, not all, most legislators in Juneau. That it is not, basically the tail is wagging the dog. That it's not the private economy that funds and drive government spending. It is the government economy that funds and drives the private economy.
Funding government. This is funding government so that the private sector can prosper.
This is funding government so that the private sector can prosper. Where do they think that money comes from? Where do they think that money comes from? It comes from the private sector.
This is funding government so that the private sector can prosper, so the private sector can do the work.
No, that's not how. That is the tail wagging the dog.
There are businesses that are going to close if the next construction year is not funded.
Then let them close. Let them close. I mean, that's what happens in the free market, right? You adapt or die. If you built your entire business model over servicing, it's like, you know, when it was horse and buggy days and then the cars came out, guess what? Farriers went out of business because there wasn't a lot of horseshoeing going on once the cars hit the road, right? They had to adapt or die. That's the free market. That's what happens. You have to change with the times. Anthony said in the chat room, if the government shuts down and your business goes bankrupt, your business model sucks and never had real legs to stand on to begin with. Let's keep it real. That's right. But see, that's the gravy train that Kathy Giesel and company are on. They've got to keep those businesses up and running because that's where they get their money for their reelection campaign. Those are the palms that they got to grease to stay in power. I mean, the balls on this lady basically saying we've got to pay money to keep these businesses afloat because that's our job. That's not government's function.
There are businesses that are going to close if the next construction year is not funded. And so I'm pretty concerned about it.
Of course you're concerned about it. Your husband works at DOT, probably has something to do with working with all these companies and justifying his position. And you certainly probably make money from a lot of the companies that pave the roads and do all the road construction. So certainly you're concerned about it. It's all self-evident, self-serving BS. But hey, she's saying it out loud, man. She's saying it out loud.
This is funding government so that the private sector can prosper, so the private sector can do the work that we needed to do. DOT
that we needed to do. You're telling me that if some of these companies close because they built their entire business model around sucking on the government teat and all of a sudden that work dries up and they go away, that when you call for work in the future, some other company who didn't build their entire business model on government lucre and can come over and do the job, you're saying that they wouldn't be available? Because construction jobs are not going to go away. You know, I mean, the road building jobs are not going to go away. You'll just lose the companies that built their entire business model off sucking off the government. And to that, I say good riddance. We have such a problem with crony capitalism in this state. Such a problem with it. And then to add to that, the whole social welfare side and the other thing and everything else. Again, Rob Myers pointing out 45% of the state's workforce depends on government. They either directly or they are government adjacent industries. 45% of the state's workforce. And that doesn't count the social safety net. And we have 2/3 of the state on Medicaid. 45%. You know what? I picked the wrong day to stop day drinking. That's all I'm saying. The wrong day. All right, my friends. We will be back tomorrow with Rob Myers and Ben Carpenter. That's going to be fun. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show. I don't know, guys. I don't know if I can maintain this level of outrage. I mean, I'm tired, man. I am, but you know, it's amazing to see that the stripes are starting to suddenly pop out and starting to show. We're seeing the cracks in the facade. We're starting to see them say the quiet part out loud, the part that they would never say before. This is going to be an interesting session, to say the least. If you haven't checked out my Patreon yet, would you do so? Maybe that'll help me maintain my calm. If you go over to patreon.com/Michael Duke Show, you could sign up to become a member of the Common Sense Corps. For as little as $3 a month or something, you can do that. And if you want to do more, do more. That's what we need to do. Maybe that'll help me keep my BP down. I don't know. But go check it out, the Common Sense Corps at patreon.com/Michael Duke Show, or you can just go to michaeldukeshow.com and click on Join the Corps right now. It's going to be better money than spending it with state taxes. That'll be worth it right there. All right, my friends, we got to go. We'll see you tomorrow.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.